Yes, my friends, the changes have begun at the Miami Dolphins. In the last few hours, we received news that some players are leaving. According to Greer, these changes were necessary to free up space in the salary cap. And fans, we have a lot to analyze. I'll tell you all the details, but first, make sure you've already pressed the like button if you're a true Miami Dolphins fan and believe that our team will come back stronger for the new season. While I'm at it, I want to ask you a question. Do you think Tua Tagovailoa should stay with the Dolphins, or should he be released as well? Leave your opinion here. Now, let's get to the point. Some players were released. Among them are Kendall Fuller, Raheem Mostert, and Durham Smythe. While these changes may not be shocking to some, they send a strong message about the team's direction heading into 2025. Starting with Raheem Mostert, his release seemed like a real possibility all season long. If you've been following along, you know the Dolphins are eyeing a younger backfield, and now it's official. With Mostert out, that leaves Miami with just two running backs under contract, Devon Achane and Jalen Wright. That 1-2 punch seems to be the plan moving forward, but there's still work to be done. Will the Dolphins bring in a veteran presence? Will they look to the draft to add depth? Maybe they'll even pursue an undrafted free agent? There are plenty of options on the table. One thing is clear, this backfield is getting younger and cheaper. Now, let's talk about Durham Smythe. His release isn't too surprising either. He simply wasn't as reliable as he used to be, and Miami had an easy way out of his contract. With Jonnu Smith making a strong impact last season, Smythe became expendable. The Dolphins still have Julian Hill on the roster, but the real question is, will they move on from him as well? Head coach Mike McDaniel has a history of holding onto his developmental projects, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next at the tight end position. Then there's Kendall Fuller. His time in Miami lasted just a single season, and while he wasn't bad, he also wasn't great. The biggest issue? Injuries. Fuller suffered multiple concussions in a short span, which likely played a major role in the team's decision to let him go. Now, Miami has a clear need at cornerback. With Fuller gone, who lines up opposite Jalen Ramsey? Do they look to the draft? Free agency? There are a lot of possibilities, but this move definitely creates a hole in the defense. Now, let's look at the bigger picture. These three cuts freed up $7.9 million in cap space. Before the moves, the Dolphins were $1.6 million over the cap. Now, they're sitting at $3.7 million over. That means Miami still has work to do. They need to clear more space, and we should expect more cuts in the coming days. Who could be next? That's where things get interesting. We know they're having conversations with Terron Armstead. If they move on from him now, they'd save $4 million. If they wait until after June 1st, that number jumps to $15 million. Then there's Alec Ingold. He could be a cap casualty, saving the team about $1 million. Punter Jake Bailey? Another possible cut, freeing up nearly $2 million. And what about Bradley Chubb? He's a strong post-June 1st candidate, which could save the Dolphins a whopping $19 million. Miami could have a ton of money to work with after June 1st, but right now, they're still over the cap. One important thing to remember, the cap is going up. Last year, it jumped by $30 million, even though the projection was much lower. If that happens again, Miami could suddenly find themselves with a solid amount of cap space without making additional moves. It all depends on the league's revenue, and with the NFL bringing in massive amounts of money from TV deals, ticket sales, and merchandise, we could see another big increase. If the cap goes up by $30 million again, Miami could be looking at nearly $27 million in cap space without touching a single contract. So, what's next? The Dolphins still have tough decisions ahead. More cuts could be coming, restructures are on the table, and the free agency market is about to heat up. And don't forget, the draft is deep in certain positions, so Miami doesn't necessarily have to spend big in free agency. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about these moves? Are you surprised by the Mostert cut? What about Durham Smythe and Kendall Fuller? And who do you think is next? Drop your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned because we've got a lot more to cover in the days ahead. Now, let's take a deeper dive into what these moves mean for the Miami Dolphins moving forward. Cutting Kendall Fuller, Raheem Mostert, and Durham Smythe was just the beginning. This is a clear signal that the front office is committed to reshaping the roster and creating the financial flexibility they need to remain competitive. But this isn't just about freeing up cap space. It's about setting the foundation for the team's future, and every move they make from this point forward will be critical. Let's start with the running back situation. The decision to release Mostert leaves Miami with just Devon Achane and Jalen Wright under contract. That tells us a few things. First, it's a sign that the Dolphins believe in Achane as their lead back. The rookie showed flashes of brilliance last season with his explosive speed and playmaking ability, and it looks like Miami is ready to hand him the keys. Jalen Wright, meanwhile, brings his own skill set to the table, but we have to wonder, are the Dolphins really going to roll into 2025 with just these two? It's hard to imagine they won't bring in at at least one more back, whether through free agency or the draft. There are some intriguing free agent options out there. Miami could target a veteran on a short-term deal to provide depth and leadership, similar to how they utilized Mostert in the past. Or they could go the draft route and take advantage of a deep running back class to add another young, cost-controlled piece to the backfield. Either way, this move signals a clear shift in philosophy. The Dolphins are going younger, faster, and cheaper in the run game, and that could have major implications for how this offense operates moving forward. Now, let's talk about the tight end position. With Durham Smythe gone, the Dolphins are left with Jonnu Smith and Julian Hill. Smith emerged as a reliable option last season, but Hill remains a bit of an unknown. Miami could easily decide to bring in another tight end, especially considering Mike McDaniel's system thrives on versatility at the position. There are some potential bargain options in free agency, and the draft has a few promising prospects who could fit Miami's scheme. The question is, how much of a priority is tight end for this team? With so many other needs to address, it might not be at the top of the list, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. The most pressing concern right now, however, might be the cornerback position. With Kendall Fuller gone, the Dolphins now have a significant hole opposite Jalen Ramsey. This is where things get interesting. Miami could go after a veteran in free agency, but they're going to have to be smart with their spending. The draft could also provide some solutions, but finding a corner who can step in and contribute immediately isn't always easy. Either way, this is now a priority position for the front office, and how they choose to address it will tell us a lot about their defensive philosophy heading into next season. And then, of course, there's the bigger picture, Miami's overall cap situation. As of right now, they're still $3.7 million over the cap, and more moves are coming. Terron Armstead remains a major question mark. If the Dolphins cut him now, they save $4 million. If they wait until after June 1st, they save $15 million. That's a massive difference, and it's why we could see Miami hold off on a decision until later in the offseason. Bradley Chubb is another name to watch. Cutting him post-June 1st would free up $19 million. That's the kind of move that could completely change Miami's financial outlook, but it's not an easy decision. Chubb is still a talented player, and losing him would create another hole that needs to be filled. This is the balancing act the Dolphins are dealing with right now. They need to free up cap space, but they also need to remain competitive. Every move has consequences, and Miami's front office is going to have to be strategic in how they navigate these next few weeks. So, what's next for the Dolphins? More cuts are coming, that's for sure. Miami still has some tough decisions to make, and we're going to see some more familiar names leave in the near future. But this is all part of the process. The Dolphins are setting themselves up to be players in free agency, and they're positioning themselves to build a roster that can compete in 2025 and beyond. Now, it's time for you to weigh in. What do you think of these moves so far? Are you surprised by the players Miami has decided to cut? Who do you think is next? And how should the Dolphins approach free agency and the draft? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned, because this is just the beginning of what's shaping up to be a very interesting offseason for the Miami Dolphins.